All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Eric Linask, and it's my pleasure to kick off today's event. Today's live webinar is called Migrating SAP to Google Cloud with SUSE and Managecore. Let me start by making a really obvious statement. Cloud adoption continues to grow. And I think it's also fairly certain that the pandemic we've all been experiencing this year has accelerated cloud strategies in many organizations. But even before that happened, the fact is that cloud had really become a key business driver with enterprises really looking to bring more and more of their workloads and applications into the cloud to increase their agility and ability to rapidly innovate, to leverage the scalability, the flexibility, the availability, and of course the economics of cloud. What maybe isn't quite as obvious to everybody is that Google's cloud platform has seen significant growth. In fact, much more growth than other public cloud providers this year. And I think it's been driven by strengths in a few key areas that are important to enterprises in their digital transformation projects and their cloud strategies. Those include things like artificial intelligence and machine learning expertise and their success with big data and analytics. And of course, those are elements that have been a big part of powering Google's success and search dominance over the years. The company also has deep expertise around open source, containerization technologies, and such, all of which are also increasing in popularity among enterprises. But aside from the technology, though, Google really has made a significant investment in enterprise digital transformation and made it a key part of its strategy over the past year. And the numbers seem to say that that's paying off. But that said, migrating your critical applications to the cloud isn't always a simple task, and businesses can ill afford to make mistakes that could jeopardize the viability of their applications, take their resources and applications offline. So given that, reducing that risk has to be top of mind when it comes to cloud migration. And so the question really becomes, how do you do it successfully and quickly without risk? And that is what has to be top of mind when it comes to bringing your mission critical apps like your SAP ecosystem into the cloud. And that's the topic that Tony McDonald and Nick Militich are here to talk about today. How can you eliminate risk from your SAP migration to Google Cloud? Before we move along with today's session, we do have a few poll questions we'd love to have you as our audience get involved with. Let us know where you guys stand and certainly help Tony and Nick kind of tailor their comments towards you, our audience. So if you all don't mind and will indulge me for a moment, I'd love to throw the first poll question out there. And that first question is, what platform are you running SAP on today? Windows, Unix, mainframe, SUSE, or none? You're evaluating SAP now. We'd love to hear what you're doing. In the meantime, I did mention Tony McDonald and Nick Militich. Tony is Global Sales Director of Google Alliances at SUSE, and Nick is the Chief Technology Officer at Managecore. Both companies really have deep expertise with Google Cloud and specifically with migrating mission-critical SAP applications, and in particular, leveraging some of the same technologies that SAP uses in its own development and production environments. Tony is going to get us started today with an overview of SUSE's expertise with SAP and with Google Cloud, and he'll talk a little bit about the value proposition for Google Cloud users. He's also going to get a little bit into SUSE's Google partnership and how that, in fact, benefits enterprise customers. With that, if you guys don't mind, I'd love to take a look and see where our audience is as far as their SAP platforms currently. And we're looking, a little bit less than half are using SUSE. Almost a third on Unix, and so 14% on Windows, and another 14% are evaluating SAP currently. So hopefully that gives you guys a little bit of perspective on where our audience stands today. So with that, I did mention a little bit of what Tony's going to be covering. Following that, we're going to get into a little bit from Nick on the benefits of migrating your SAP applications to Google Cloud, as well as some detail about Managecore's own migration approach. Nick is also going to talk about the Cloud Acceleration Program and Google's commitment to SAP customers. Following their presentations, we've certainly left time, as always, for your questions, and I encourage you all to submit any questions you have as they come up using the interfaces on your screens. Certainly, like I said, if you get them to us as they come up, you won't forget them when we get to the Q&A session. I mentioned we do have a few poll questions. We've got a couple more that are coming to you. And if at the end of the session you're interested in the slides from today's presentation, contact information for both organizations will be available at the end of today's session, as well as in your email inboxes tomorrow. So you get the details, not only the contact information, but details on how you can access the on-demand version of today's event. I did promise that we have a few more poll questions. So with that, I'd love to get to the second one, which gets us into a little more detail. How are you managing configuration and patch management for your Linux distributions? Manually, using open source tools, or you're using proprietary tools? Now, Tony, you know, as we wait for our attendees to let us know what they're doing, what have you seen typically from customers that come to you? What are they doing in terms of their management?
We typically see a blend of tools. You know, if they have Windows systems, they probably have a proprietary tool of some sort for the Windows systems. And it seems like a lot of customers that I've personally engaged with that are running Linux are pretty much doing it manually, right? So it's hard to scale when you have to do everything manually, and you run into differences in one configuration versus the next because, you know, human error and things of that sort. That's typically what I run into.
Absolutely. Let's take a look at what our audience is telling us. And you know, a little bit of proprietary, but you know, the majority using either open source tools or doing it manually. So you know, I think that largely chimes with what you just said, Tony.
Mm-hmm. Yep, you're absolutely right.
So with that, you know, Tony, I'm going to let you take it away.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Eric. Here we go. Once again, my name is Tony McDonald. I'm the Global Sales Director here at SUSE for the Google Alliance. And today we're going to talk about, you know, why SUSE? Why SUSE on GCP, more importantly, right? So I always say we, collectively SUSE, when we talk with customers and we keep hearing these recurring themes of some of the business challenges customers are having as to why they're moving to the cloud, right? Cost is a big one, and that's always going to be around, right? That's just inherent in what we do day to day. You know, the shift from CapEx to OpEx. Reliability. A lot of customers feel that they can get better reliability in the cloud versus having their own data centers that they need to maintain. And now with COVID, where maybe getting access to those physical data centers might be restricted, they might be limiting how many people they can have in there at a time, whatever it may be, going to the cloud is a really great option nowadays, right? And then for the customers, they want to be able to provide their customers better service, better performance, better time to value, right? And a lot of the clouds already have services already pre-built that you can just consume as IT versus having to go out and build a database service, for example. It's a simple example, but nonetheless, right? Going out to have to build a database service for my application to consume, I can just get a database service that's already available in my cloud provider and consume that directly, okay? And then why SUSE and GCP? Really resilience. I mean, when we look at GCP's footprint and how they built out their environment, it's built for resilience, right? It can take those failures. They build it knowing that something is going to fail, okay? And from an automation standpoint, SUSE has tools that allow repeatable processes, so you can build out an environment from your test, your prod, to your production that looks identical, right? And then we layer on top of their tools to help alleviate any of this human error, right? This way you get a repeatable configuration every time you deploy it over and over, depending on the different environments you have, okay? So as we look at, price always comes into play, right? As much as we hate to say that, price is important. We want the quality, we want quality, and we want the best price possible. And SUSE provide 3 different pricing options when we're looking at the cloud. The first one is pay-as-you-go. This is your hourly rate that you're going to pay. We have our SLES images out there and our SLES for SAP images. Then we have, for our SLES for SAP images today, we have what's called a committed use discount. And that allows you to buy a 1 or 3 year subscription commitment and get up to a 64% discount. Now, the great thing about this option is let's say you sign up for a 3-year option, you don't have to pay for the 3-year subscription up front. Google is going to bill you monthly over the course of those 3 years, right? So you get the CapEx experience, if you will, because you own this commitment for 3 years, but with the OpEx benefit of the lower controlled price over 3 years. Okay, and then we have BYOS. Now, BYOS is bring your own subscription. So there's many cases where our customers want to do a data center transformation, or they want to do a lift and shift into the cloud, but they already have a commitment of licenses that they purchased. Maybe they're halfway through their subscription or whatever it may be. We allow you to bring those licenses to GCP. So you're keeping your investment, you're able to maximize that investment. And then when it comes time to renew, because that subscription needs to be renewed, you just re-up your BYOS and you're good to go. Okay. I put this one up here just so people kind of had an idea of what it looks like from a pay-as-you-go to a committed use discount, because the percentage off is off of the pay-as-you-go rate, not off of like the list rate if you were to buy it from a distributor. So you can see a 1-year committed use discount is 60% off the price of the pay-as-you-go, and a 3-year is a 64% off the price of the pay-as-you-go. So it's a great way, when you look at SLES for SAP, those are types of workloads where you're not going to be changing your carrier every 6 months or every month, right? This is a commitment from probably a strategic standpoint for your organization. This way you're allowed to get the best price possible up front to keep your operating costs low, right? And we have a shared support model with Google. So Google, when you purchase your subscriptions via the marketplace, okay, you're going to get different support model than if you were to do a BYOS. A BYOS is you pretty much bought it directly from SUSE, so all your support for the operating system is handled directly with SUSE. When you buy it via the marketplace or that committed use discount, which essentially is on Google paper, I'm doing air quotes, all by myself, first and second level support is handled by Google for the software as well as the infrastructure. Okay, so you have one person you can call. Simplifies, oh my God, I don't know who to call. Do I call SUSE directly? Do I call Google? Do I call? You just call one number. You're gonna get Google. They're gonna handle your first and second level operating system questions and handle all your infrastructure questions. And if it's something that they're not able to assist with, Google will escalate directly to SUSE, and then we'll work with them to fix that problem. Okay, and then we provide 4 different levels of SLAs depending on the type of severity problem you are having, right? 1 hour, 2 hour, 4 hour, or next day. So some of the additional value we have here. Now I labeled the first one Terraform, and I should have just made it automation because we use Terraform as well as Salt, okay? And so we're gonna use these tools to help lay down the SAP cluster, for example, right? So you can go out to GitHub and you can get everything you need off of GitHub, right, to lay down that SAP environment. And you're gonna be able to do that in a repeatable format, right? And it takes the deployment time from days down to hours when you use the Terraform scripts that we have built specific for GCP, okay? This really allows you to maximize your resources, right? Be able to do more with less, because that's what automation allows you to do. And it increases your time to value, increases your time to market, right? Be able to maybe beat the competition to the market by getting your SAP environment up and running. The updated infrastructure. So SUSE maintains 3 servers in each region of the world to provide updates and patches to the operating system, okay, to SLES and SLES for SAP. Now, this is only for our cloud. This is only for subscriptions that are purchased through the pay-as-you-go mechanism, okay? This has nothing to do with my data center, my on-site data center and my BYOS images. These are specific to the GCP, okay? And then images. One thing that's different between SUSE and the other distributions of Linux that are out there, for the cloud providers, SUSE builds and maintains those images on GCP, okay? So that means we can keep the quality up to our standards. So if we want to push out something that, hey, this is a product thing, it would be really great to get this out there. It's not so much part of our normal patch cycle or update cycle. We think that's relevant and customers are going to want it. We can push that into the images, unbeknownst to Google or anybody, and make the latest and greatest image available. When a new vulnerability comes out and there's an exploit taking advantage of that vulnerability, we can update it extremely quickly and get that out to make sure that the customers are protected, okay? And then we have in-place upgrades, meaning that you can go from, you know, SLES 12 Service Pack 4 to SLES 15 without having to do a complete rebuild, right? Everything stays intact. And the same thing with service packs. You can skip a service pack during your upgrades. So you don't always have to be on the latest and the greatest, right? You can skip SP1 and go right to SP3. So those are just some of the values that we provide, okay? Now, one thing that we have that was announced, I believe in August, and not everybody is aware of this, is customers who purchase SLES for SAP in the GCP marketplace have a entitlement, and that entitlement allows you to SUMA Lifecycle Manager and live patching. Now, so for those of you who are not aware of SUMA, it stands for SUSE Manager, and that is our configuration and patch management platform, right? That allows you to manage different environments. If you will, you cluster servers together, make different environments. You can roll out different patch levels to those particular servers. You can understand what the configurations are of those servers in those different groups, okay? And that allows you to help manage your configuration across your different groups as well, okay? Now, the great thing with SUMA is it does an awesome job on SLES and SLES for SAP, but it also manages Red Hat, CentOS, Ubuntu, and Oracle, which I forgot to put on there, okay? Then we can bundle this in. You can add on live patching. So live patching can be used with or without SUMA. They are not dependent of each other, but live patching integrates nicely into SUMA. And this gives you a mechanism where you can deploy patches and not have to reboot your servers, okay? Not every patch is a live patch, if that makes sense. So there may be some reboot time, even though you have live patching. Now, they recommend that you still reboot at least once every 6 months and versus every month, right, when patches come out. So that can significantly increase your uptime and not having to take outages to maintain your environment for patches, okay? So risk mitigation. Now, one thing we like to point out is every version of SLES for SAP is certified by certified by SAP, I'm sorry, as well as GCP, okay? There are competitors that are out there, and I want you to do your due diligence to verify if their latest versions of Linux are certified for SAP and certified for GCP, because you'd be surprised to find out that they're not, okay? We also have 10-year life cycle, which it's a great life cycle, right? You know that you're going to get on SUSE, and you can be there for 10 years. You don't have to worry about having to come off in a couple of years, okay? And then I mentioned the in-place upgrade and the ability to skip service packs. Okay. So SUSE engineered for partnerships. So we have one thing that's really great working with Google is they're open source, just like we're open source. All right, so there's a lot of synergies there. And one of the things that we just built was the SUSE High Availability Extension. This is now part of the GCP. And what this is really for was for a fencing agent and floating IP addresses. And so part of this was removing the old Google SDK, where before you had to go out to every server that was in that cluster and install the Google SDK. Now we're using the Python API, so it's a faster and simpler way to deploy this, okay? So that's just one example. Another example that we're working on is confidential VMs, and Google's going to be going GA with that by the end of the month. So SUSE Labs did all the upstream work with, AMDs to enable this type of technology. And this confidential VMs allows you to read encrypted data without having to unencrypt it, right? And so I think there's going to be a lot of advantages for healthcare organizations, companies that are really interested in security, the government space, so forth and so on. It's going to be a lot of interest in that. That's a great example where our team worked with AMD to build something that the open source community can take advantage of, and then Google grabbed it and said, hey, we can use this, as well as all the other Linux distributions are able to use it as well. So that's a great example of 3 companies coming together to do something with open source, and the outcome, benefits everybody. Okay. And we're best of breed, right? So we have Nick is going to talk about the Google Cloud Acceleration Program in a little bit, but it's a great way to accelerate your data center migrations, and Nick will get into details, right? SUSE, we have a 25-year partnership with SAP. We cohabitate each other's offices when we're not in a lockdown. We help each other with support. They do all their development work on top of SUSE. So we're really their go-to partner, right? And then 95% of SAP runs on Hana. We have more than 25, I said that wrong, 95% of SAP Hana runs on SUSE. There we go. And more than 25,000 SAP customers worldwide, right? So with that said, I'm gonna hand it over to Nick, and then Nick's gonna finish up. And Nick, are you able to?
Yep.
You got it?
I will take it from here.
All right, awesome.
All right. Perfect. Well, thanks, Tony. As Tony had mentioned, my name is Nick Miltich. I'm with Managecore, and now I'm going to kind of go over running SAP on GCP and what that migration would look like. In here. Okay. So before I get into exactly what a migration would look like, I want to spend a few minutes talking about what SAP on GCP looks like and the benefits of migrating to a platform like GCP. And really, you have to think about GCP as an innovation platform and a transformational platform more than just a lift and shift. We all know that we can move workloads from on-prem or a virtual environment or physical hardware to a public cloud or a hyperscaler like GCP. However, it's much more than just lifting and shifting. I think that's the foundational framework of what can happen in GCP. But in addition to that, it's really innovation and transformation of your business. It gives you the stepping stones to be able to take your business to that next level. In GCP, you not only can move to a virtualized platform, but once you're moved and migrated into the cloud, you can then utilize the feature functions and the technology that GCP has to offer, right? And those technologies are items like BigQuery to really analyze your data, machine learning, AI, all of that is possible once you've migrated into a platform such as GCP. Now, what can you run in Google Cloud? Really, anything from an SAP perspective that is supported today is generally available within the Google Cloud. So there's not much that you can't run within GCP. However, certain things need to be taken into consideration, like your database platform in OS and products that may be on the fringe of SAP support, or older products that are out of SAP support or an extended maintenance. Some of those platforms may not be able to be run in GCP. However, examples like Hana on SUSE absolutely can be run in GCP, whether it's BW, S4 Hana, or any other product that can run on Hana is definitely supported within GCP. We see a lot of auxiliary products such as business objects, data services, SAP SLT, things of that nature are all really supported within Google Cloud. And then innovations and working and the partnership between GCP and SAP are allowing for new products to really be released, almost every few months. One of them is SAP's Llama product. That is on the roadmap, and it is in motion to actually be a management platform within the Google Cloud at some point. Okay, so now I'm going to focus on a few key differentiators of why running on GCP and why is SAP on GCP a good choice. Now, there's a lot of topics on the screen, so I will touch on what I feel like are the most important topics and most important reasons on why Google Cloud is a great platform for SAP. First and foremost, it's the availability and uptime. SAP on GCP can offer up to 99.99% SLA availability when it comes to your actual servers. And in addition to designing and architecting it appropriately to make that happen, GCP also offers what's called live migration. And live migration is unique to the Google Cloud in that within a zone, it allows for seamless movement of your systems without ever having to take an outage. So that means, as an example, if there were hardware issues or hardware needed to be patched or upgraded or repaired, GCP in the back end will move your SAP environment from one server to another seamlessly without you ever knowing it. Or you would know it, you could get an alert for it, however, without any impact to your business. It is just a seamless migration. You keep on continuing to run throughout the whole process, and they will move you from time to time to make sure that they can handle maintenance on specific physical hardware. The other main topic is Google security, and that really is twofold. One, on what they have to offer for the hardware and hypervisor layer, but also the products that they can run, but also the networking piece. And I'll get to the networking because I feel like it deserves its own topic. But from Google security standpoint, you are in a private network when you enter Google. So what that means is that once you enter that network, all that traffic is within Google and does not traverse any other additional networks or any other additional carriers. In that environment, you're also encrypted in transit and at rest. So that gives you the ability to, by default, always be encrypted when you're inside of Google. And that really makes it a much more minimal exposure to any risk when moving your SAP environment into GCP. In addition to that, Google has a lot of different products like Security Command Center that will allow you to actually monitor, manage, and maintain your environment once it's in GCP. Now, the next main topic is really the global network. And I can't stress enough how important that is, not only, as I mentioned, from a security standpoint, but from a functionality standpoint. And what I mean by that is the ability to control the network from start to finish allows Google to make a lot of great technology advancements that you can't find in other clouds. Some of those being, as an example, global resources. So a VPC, a virtual private cloud, you consider that your data center, if you will, your virtual data center, that can span globally and multiple regions, whereas in standard or other competitor clouds, that really is not an option, right? Because they don't have their own private network. And that allows for not only global configurations, so it means less work for IT staff to have to parse out multiple subnets, but it also allows for faster HA and DR capabilities, and it allows for capabilities that just aren't available in other clouds. Spanning HA using SUSE clustering as an example across multiple zones for a Hana database is feasible in GCP, right? There's no extra special config that has to get done or any type of really thought that has to go through it. You can actually just deploy a SUSE cluster with Hana and Hana replication and have your database replicating between two different zones in a region, which equates to two different physical data center locations. So it's a really unique feature that is available in GCP that no other public cloud offers. And the last real touch point would be the commercial benefits, the pay-as-you-go pricing. I won't get too much into the pricing aspect of it, but just knowing that Google has the most flexible pricing model in the market. A lot of competitors will make you stay on a platform that you may outgrow at some point, depending on if you commit to 1 year or 3 years. But Google allows you to pick and choose, right? You're committing to a CPU and a memory ratio, and that means you can spin up one server and use all of your commit, or you can spin up 10 servers and use all of your commit. And you have the autonomy to change it through the course of your whole entire commit. So they're very flexible and allow you to really utilize your resources how it's intended in the public cloud versus really locking you down to a specific commitment. Okay, so now I'm going to get into migrating your SAP environment into GCP, and what does that actually entail? Migrating to GCP from an on-prem or what I would call a private cloud model really is a streamlined, straightforward process. It sounds daunting to have to migrate your SAP environment, but it really is a very, very seamless migration when you really break down the pieces. There's really a few different aspects to it, right? We want to move your environment, and that's really what we consider a lift and shift. We may have to migrate your environment, so that may mean we have to take you from Oracle to Hana as an example, or from a different platform to SUSE, and then transform. So we may actually take some SAP products, migrate them into GCP, and then connect them up to additional GCP resources such as BigQuery to allow you to really transform and modernize your technology. The key to migrating your environment really starts and ends with a solid been there, done that migration strategy. And that's really what Managecore can't stress enough when it comes to migrating your environment. Our Managecore migration project really encompasses everything from start to finish, right? It takes the architecture required, it takes your build script and runs through the entire process from architecting to deploying to hypercare. And that's really what Managecore MG focuses on. Our Managecore Migrate really helps with making sure you have a successful project. And to date, knock on wood, Managecore hasn't had a failed migration project or one that has exceeded the time frame associated with that project. And the reason behind it is there's a solid game plan that is repeatable and takes out as much human error as possible. Now, getting into that aspect of it, it really starts with the planning, right? Proper scoping is key. You have to understand what you want to migrate, and you have to understand how you're going to get there. It's not just, I want to go to Hana. It's where you're starting from. Are you starting on an Oracle database and you want to convert? Do you already have Hana? Maybe what auxiliary systems need to go with. Maybe you have a Vertex environment that has to go with. Maybe you have print servers that have to go with. And not only from an infrastructure standpoint, but from a networking standpoint. Really, where do you in your SAP environment have to communicate to? Maybe there's external banks, external FTP sites. All of that has to be taken into consideration and really is part of that first step. We don't want to be going through a project or a migration where we have those type of surprises right out of the gate if we can help it. That really is key to getting you migrated into GCP. And then from that planning phase to the blueprint phase, and that blueprint is almost as important as that planning phase. It's deploying what we talked about and making sure that those concepts work in your environment and work when migrated into GCP. And then from there, it's a rinse and repeat. It's going through your dev, your quality, and eventually your mock prod and prod migration. And each time is a repeatable process using tool sets, using scripting to make sure that your systems are migrated exactly in the same process as each iteration. And that, again, that's key, and that's part of the Managecore MG migration process is making sure that this is repeatable, because we definitely don't want any surprises as we get closer to a production migration. Okay, so here's an example, high-level migration approach. Migration projects in general, when going to GCP, take about 12 weeks on average, depending if you're converting your database, if you're ready on Hana and you want to stay on, obviously stay on Hana, but just go to GCP, or let's say you're on Oracle and want to convert to Hana. Those are the type of caveats that would be taken into account for determining how long a project takes, but anywhere between 3 and 5 months is the average life cycle of a project like this. And again, it starts with really that blueprint phase, and that first month is so critical, not only from a planning perspective, but from a deployment perspective. Because if you really take a step back, that first month, before we start migrations, Managecore configures a basically virtual data center for you in GCP. So if you think about it, if anyone has physical data centers today and has hardware in those locations, think of the amount of effort it took to make that happen, right? You order hardware, you rack it, you stack it, you add a SAN, you add a virtualization layer, you add networks, you add firewalls and switches and core routers. All that plumbing has to be put in place before you can even say, let's migrate an SAP system. And really, that can all be accomplished within a few weeks after discussing the exact planning and how we're going to migrate your environment and all the caveats around your particular situation. So taking that, from that angle, you can understand how quickly and how efficiently spinning up resources in GCP really is. I can take all of that resource that you have on premise today and deploy that within a week or two. It's not a very lengthy process within GCP, and the scripting that we perform and the process that we have with Managecore MG allows us to do that, right? We have it down. We've done this. It's a rinse and repeat, and we have successfully migrated clients in as little as 8 weeks and as long as roughly 16 weeks. So it really depends on your landscape, but really that initial phase is going to be key for you. Okay, a few options when migrating to SAP or migrating to GCP. You really have two different, what I would call main options when migrating. You have your standard SAP migration tools and you have your cloud migration tools. So when everyone thinks about the cloud and they think about all the tools that are available to them, everyone thinks and assumes, hey, we can migrate the environment just using Toolsets. So Google has Migrate for Compute Engine as an example. I can take a VM, I can load this toolset into the farm, and I can migrate VMs pretty seamlessly. And Managecore has done that for clients in the past. One client in particular, we migrated and were able to migrate their environment on a weekend for production in 4 hours. And that was multiple HANA environments, BobJ, PO, a few other SAP products, but we can do that with Toolsets. But there are trade-offs, and this is what we really focus on when we do that planning session. Then there's the SAP Standard Migration. So you have the homogeneous and heterogeneous type of migration. So that's maybe moving a database backup, maybe doing a DMO or a SWPM export-import and moving that file and converting it or upgrading it from Oracle to HANA. All of that is taken into consideration when planning the exact type of move. Managecore generally prefers using the SAP migration tool sets, doing it the standard method. The main reason being is that 9 times out of 10, you're looking to change your platform, right? You're looking to go to HANA. You're looking to maybe upgrade a database or an OS as part of this migration. Even if you're on HANA, maybe you want to go to from 1.0 to 2.0. Maybe you want to convert to SUSE. At those points, we would be looking at an SAP standard migration, right? A database restore or an export import. It's also the cleanest method because there's no surprises once you move to GCP. You're not moving what I would consider possible baggage from your current environment. And I'll get to that more with the cloud migration tool in a minute. But it is the cleanest method. It gets you a fresh start in GCP, and there's no ghosts lingering around when you migrate in that fashion. Now, the cloud migration tool, those type of tool sets are really good for minimizing downtime and migrating your environment quickly. We can do migrations really quick with those cloud migration tools, get you in GCP and up and running very, very quickly. Migrate for Compute Engine, which if you migrate to GCP is free of charge. You can use that to migrate to Google Cloud. That will actually migrate you exponentially faster than taking a backup and restore. And the way that product works is it actually takes a quick snapshot of your environment, spins it up in GCP, and then starts replicating the changes. The beauty of this product, though, is it actually allows you to be running on that server while those changes are replicated. So if you take a step back and think about that, your VM could be up in an hour, and then you're replicating changes depending on bandwidth and throughput and usage. You could replicate for the next 4 hours, or you could replicate for the next week. It doesn't matter. You can throttle it, and you can actually be up and running in GCP really, really quickly. Now, the downfall to tools like that is that you bring over like for like what you have. So let's say you want to migrate to Hana. It's not probably the right tool set for that. Let's say you want to change OSs, again, not the right tool set because I'm migrating like for like. The other piece of that is even if you stayed with the same platform, you're migrating over software like for like. So if you have maybe an old backup software that you no longer need, maybe you have tool sets you loaded on that you no longer need or don't make sense once you migrate to GCP, they will come with it, right? So you can always uninstall them, but they will be there. So you are migrating, again, you could be migrating ghosts, you could be migrating problems. So you just want to make sure that as we have discussions around how and best to approach your migration, we make the right decisions. Because the cloud migration tools are quick and easy, but they come at a cost. And that cost is generally what I would call migrating a dirty environment, right? And we've seen it. We've been at clients where we migrated them. It could be a two-phase approach. We migrated clients, and now you're in GCP, and then we take another approach, and for the next 12 months after that, we work towards maybe reinstalling on clean OSs or something of that nature. So there's all sorts of ways to perform these migrations, but eyes wide open when going into migrations. You do have two options, and a lot of people talk about the tool sets, but they do come with their limitations. And the biggest limitation I would say that happens to a lot of our SAP clients is that they're coming from what we call private clouds, right? They're not the big hyperscalers. They're not Azure, AWS, or GCP. They're coming from somewhere else, but hosted there. 9.9 times out of 10, you are not going to be allowed to install tool sets in a virtual environment, add another hosting provider to even make that migration tool set work. So keep that in mind as well as you go through this journey, understanding that that tool set really has a limited use case. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about requirements for your organization. We always talk about what do we do in your environment, what are we going to take care of, but there are tasks that are always going to be required from your organization as Managecore helps move your environment to GCP as an example. We always need a project liaison. You're always going to want to make sure that someone is there that helps the business and guides the functional aspect, the business aspect of migrating these systems, the timing of it, what other projects are occurring, all of that within your environment. The second biggest team other than the functional SAP team are going to be your network team, right? It's going to be making those connections into GCP, ordering circuits, or ability to spin up VPN tunnels. All of that is the framework and foundation for us to be able to start some of these migrations. And then the database and SAP licensing, right? That is BYOL. GCP doesn't resell SAP. It doesn't resell the HANA licensing. You have to procure that from SAP, which you already have if you're running SAP. It's just a matter of making sure that you have a current contract when we move you, and make sure that you're on support so that we can migrate you seamlessly, you know, under the supervision of SAP, you know, allowing us to open messages and things like that should we run into problems. Notice I didn't put OS licensing because that generally is brought through GCP. So Managecore definitely recommends just buying the licensing through Google Cloud Direct. That allows you to make sure you're compliant when running your OS in GCP. And then in addition to that, this is a really good time to make sure your policies and procedures and your compliance is all up to date, right? We have the opportunity to redeploy a data center for you, and that's what we're doing here. And with that being said, we want to make sure that we adhere to all the compliance and policies and procedures that you have, and we build that into this new data center. And that could be anything from firewall access to specific server builds, right? We may need to put specific tool sets on these servers, or configure them or harden them in a certain manner for your organization. So those are really the requirements. Other than that, you know, a firm like Managecore takes it from start to finish, and we can migrate you, you know, into GCP pretty seamlessly. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about an example client that we moved. This client was moved a few years ago. This is an actual client. It's a sample for us, but this is a real client. The client name is FFF Enterprises. They are a leading distributor of flu vaccines. So, you know, during these times, you can understand how critical their business is to the economy and to the country. And really, their challenge was continual outages. They were a net new deployment on SAP several years back, and that deployment continued to linger them in a private cloud that they were in. They had multiple outages, and multiple outages equated to many, many hours of downtime, right? Some of the outages were over 8 hours of downtime, and FFF leadership took a step back and said, we need to make this change. We need to change to a platform that allows us to not continually worry and babysit our SAP environment, but give us the autonomy to be able to actually transform and innovate instead of really just watching, making sure your environment's running on a day-to-day standpoint. This client actually had even reports that would run on a daily basis that we would have to watch, that they were watching in their previous setup in their private cloud, just to make sure it would run on a daily basis. And that shouldn't be occurring in an SAP environment on any platform. Our solution, we did migrate them in 12 weeks from a third-party data center. We used a tool set for that. So that was done using a cloud migration tool. This account, or this client, actually migrated within, as I mentioned, 4 hours on a Saturday. So it was a very, very seamless migration, start to finish. Like as this slide shows, we did this in a 12-week turnaround time. The actual migration itself, pretty straightforward, but I do want to reiterate, the type of components they had. They do have multiple SAP environments. It wasn't just S4. It was BobJ, it was PO, Solution Manager, a lot of third-party products. So it wasn't just, hey, we're going to migrate one SAP environment and leave the rest on-prem. It truly was an SAP holistic landscape migration. Now, some of the solution benefits. Once we migrated them to GCP, some of their reports, in fact, ran 7 times faster than it did on their current platform at the time. Now, I'm sure some of you are wondering, okay, that can be accomplished via hardware, that can be accomplished via just doubling the size of the servers. You know, what really was migrated? And I can attest to saying that we migrated these systems like for like. So as close to their current specs as possible. They ran a roughly 512 gig environment in their current vendor at the time, and we migrated them to the same size. So as close as we could to those sizes. And they were seeing dramatic increase in performance. And that's really a testament to the hardware that GCP has to offer, their hypervisor layer, and the ability for GCP to continue to innovate on their platforms and offer the newest chipsets available. Cost savings really went down with this platform as well. Some of the aspects of it, they saved over 80%. And really, the main key benefit for them was true 24/7 by 365 peace of mind. They really struggled keeping their systems running, and once switching to GCP and Managecore, we really had the capability and the technology available to us to keep their systems running efficiently. And that truly led to FFF being an innovator going forward and not worrying and relying on figuring out why their systems were either performing badly or having outages. And as you can see from the quote on the right-hand side, it really was a game changer for them. They no longer worry about, are we going to have an outage? Is this stable? Is this redundant? They focus all their energy and effort now into transforming the business and innovating for the business to keep up with demand in their industry. Okay, so now a little bit about the CAP program from Google. So Google has really taken strides to help clients move to GCP. And one of those programs offered by Google is the Cloud Acceleration Program. And really what the Cloud Acceleration Program allows you to do is actually get a rebate for migrating to GCP. And I'll get in a little bit of detail in the financial example, but Google really wants clients to migrate to their platform, and they're willing to assist with that. So any new clients that want to migrate to GCP, there are definite opportunities and capabilities of Google to even fund not only some of the Google Cloud spend, but in a lot of cases, fund the project itself. So as an example, you do get a rebate based on the 1-year ACV spend. So if you're $30,000 a month, you would get 1 year rebate based on the total annual spend and up to 6 months free of GCP credits. Generally, that's enough to, on average, pay for an entire migration into GCP and give you rebates to either discount your monthly spend or even give you several months for free. A lot of our customers are averaging between 7 and 12 months of free GCP spend in addition to a free migration when moving into GCP. So it is a very, very compelling story. It's a very, very captivating program. It is going through the end of the year. So you don't have to migrate through the end of the year. You just have to move and commit to going to GCP by the end of the year. But this program will really allow you to get into GCP at little to no cost from a migration standpoint. So very, very compelling. And as I mentioned, on average, our clients are seeing at a minimum a complete package deal where we pay for where Google pays for the migration 100% and gives you several months of running in GCP for free before you have to actually start paying. So you know, with the economy the way it is, a lot of people are looking to save money and cut costs. This is a great way to get into a new platform and switch for free and be able to run with it for several months free in this platform. And really just focusing on the full solution overview. As I mentioned, Managecore and Google pretty much can provide a turnkey solution, with Google providing the infrastructure and facility, while Managecore provides our managed services and migration services, with Managecore MG performing the migration, and Managecore Go and Managecore IQ providing the services once the migration is in place. Now really the next step for us is to really contact Managecore and or SUSE. If we can get some basic information of your environment, we'd be happy to walk through some initial details and even initial pricing. You know, we'd be happy to take a look at your environment, and generally within a week we can turn around a quote that even calculates some of that cap funding from Google to really let you know what it looks like to migrate and what rebates you can expect when migrating into GCP. And really all we need for that is some specific information on your environment, you know, number of SIDs, OS, things of that nature. Okay, at this point I'll pause and turn it back over for any questions. And in addition to that, if there's anyone that wants a copy of this presentation going forward, please feel free to contact Kristen Tanner at ktanner@managecore.com. But I'll turn it over back to you.
Thanks a lot, Nick. Tony and Nick, thanks for some great information. We do have time for a few questions. Before I do that, I do want to get one more poll question out there. You know, you guys have both been talking about the whole migration process, so I'd love to hear from our audience on their Hana migration plans. So for you and our audience, what are your plans for migrating to Hana? It's in process. You're planning to start in the next 3 to 6 months, or the next 6 to 9 months, or you're looking at more than 3 months out. So to Nick and Tony, while our audience responds to the question, what have you guys seen in the past 7, 8 months in terms of businesses accelerating or changing their cloud migration plans? Have you seen any change?
Yeah, I'd say that we've seen a lot of companies really pivoting to hyperscalers such as GCP, and the reason really is that innovation piece, right? It's not only a cost saver, but people are looking to innovate, stay competitive, stay relevant, especially in this economy, really trying to focus on how can we make our business better. And you have to really treat SAP as a transformational platform, and how do you use it to its fullest potential. You can't do that necessarily on-prem, and you can't do that necessarily in a what I would call a private cloud. So we've seen a lot of shift and pivot into migrating to a public cloud such as GCP to allow for that innovation.
Great, thank you. Nick, you, just going back to the last slide that you had up there, when do companies, or how quickly would companies need to take advantage of the Cloud Acceleration Program?
That's a great question. It does expire at the end of the year, so it's not an absolute guarantee that it would be extended. But all you would need to do is commit to going to GCP and migrating your SAP workload, and then you generally have several months to even start the project, right? You don't have to start it right away, but you do have to make sure that you get in that program and sign up for migrating your workload to GCP by the end of the year.
Great, thanks, Nick. And Tony, similar question for you. How do people take advantage of the committed use discount? Certainly something that any business should be interested in.
Yeah, it's actually pretty straightforward. In the console, when you're deploying your virtual machines, you give an option for how you want to purchase this. Pay as you go or committed use discount, and it'd be the 1 or 3 year option for you to select from. So it's pretty straightforward.
Thanks. And take a look at what our audience tells us. More than half are looking at more than 9 months out for their Hana migration. So hopefully some of this information will come in handy. Nick, certainly something that has to be a consideration when it comes to risk. In a typical migration to SAP migration to GCP, how much downtime can companies expect?
Sure, that's a great question. So depending on the migration strategy, typical downtimes could be anywhere between 2 hours and I would say roughly 12 hours for the actual downtime portion of these environments. We're trending dependent on if you're actually converting from a certain platform to Hana. That would obviously take longer because there's only certain ways you can do that. So we're seeing anywhere between, like I said, 2 hours and 12 hours of downtime, and then performing that over a weekend.
Great, thanks. And for our audience, I do have one last poll question for you. How is your SAP environment managed? Self-managed on-premises or self-managed in the cloud? Or you're using a managed service provider in hosted or a cloud environment? So again, thank you for taking a couple of moments to provide us some information there. Tony, so for folks who are using SUSE Manager in their on-premises environments, can they also use it to manage their GCP, SAP, Linux environment patch management?
Yes. Well, we're not going to patch the application itself, but we'll patch the underlying operating system, whether they're in the cloud or on-prem. That's the great thing with the tools. It doesn't necessarily matter where the systems reside. There may have to be a additional use of a proxy that's put in place to make sure that we can, essentially it's a gateway to allow us access to that particular domain where those systems may reside. But you can use SUMA to patch on any cloud and on-prem. Great,
thank you. Nick, you mentioned some of the other public cloud providers out there. What really is the benefit of that you've seen when customers are running SUSE specifically in Google Cloud?
Sure, yeah, I could spend a whole nother presentation on that. However, the main benefits, again, have to deal with Google's commitment to their technology first and foremost. It is a vetted technology, and what I mean by that is they've taken every consideration into account, from their virtualization of their platform, right? Google's one of the only ones that has virtualization even in the large instances. The other clouds don't have that. Once you start getting into larger instances, they're bare metal. The networking, right? The networking's all private. Once you're in Google, you're technically safe, right? It's a complete private network that allows you to run your workload completely encrypted, in transit, and at rest in a vacuum, versus having to traverse different carriers' lines, right? Every time you get exposed to a different carrier and make that switch, you're really in the hands of that carrier for that point in time your data is being transferred. And then lastly, it really comes down to the model of pricing that Google has to offer. You're not limited to a certain server. You can commit to memory and CPU, and then you can use it how you so choose in these commitments. And during the duration, you can change that up. You can change it as long as you're using the same amount of memory and CPU across one server or 10 servers. That is completely up to you, and a lot of the other clouds don't offer that.
Awesome, thanks, Nick. That really does take us to the end of the time that we have today. I want to thank both Tony and Nick for sharing some of their expertise with our audience today. And of course, thank you to our audience for taking time out of your busy days. If you have additional questions, again, hopefully you had a chance to jot down Tony or Nick's contact information. If not, contact details will also be in a follow-up email, which you should all be receiving tomorrow, as well as Kristen's email address if you're looking for the presentation deck from today. So with that, again, We are out of time. Hope to see you again here real soon, and have a fantastic afternoon, everybody.